Hey friends. Well, it's been another great day. Kind of tail end of the holidays type of day. My brother, both brothers, and their respective partners, and one brother's kids are down here in Albuquerque with us, having a wonderful kind of last night before people take off. And I'm still sort of moving one step at a time towards exiting this place, heading to a different city for 2 months, a little more. And I had a really great conversation this morning with a dear friend and student and client and thought partner in many ways. And we were talking about how you register where you are in a creative process. In other words, like how do we read our own signs? It's like reading our own telemetry. If we were a race car driver, I don't know why that image came into my head, but it's what's there. But reading our own stats and understanding what that means about how we're playing, how we're doing, where we are and where we might want to go, how we might want to adjust our course. And basically it kind of amounts to like seeing, should I be pushing now? Should I be relaxing, hanging back? And we talked around that a bit, and we sort of like looked at her perspective from a couple different angles. And of course, as I do that, it's also always a reflection of my own. It always reflects on me to some degree. I find myself, I constantly find that when I'm working with a student on a really deep level, it brings up this, not necessarily the same exact dilemma in my own life, but it brings up something analogous, and it brings up something where I also have work to do. Because if I didn't, then I probably wouldn't be confronted with this particular student in this particular predicament. There's always a symbiosis between the teacher and the student, in that the student is also evolving the teacher. That's kind of the agreement. I know it's funny, in The Law of One, which is this book it's a book of channeling that I read, I don't know, 6 or 9 months ago. It's been a while now. But they talk about learn, teaching, teach, learning, like teach/learn, learn/teaching, because they're, of course, you can't do one without the other. There's no such thing. Even if you think you are strictly learning, even if you feel like you are strictly the student and you can't imagine what on earth you'd be offering the teacher, you can rest assured that you are offering the teacher exactly what they need to learn. You are offering up very selflessly, in many ways, as the student, exactly what that teacher needs in order to grow. And so I just find that, and once you're kind of aware that that's how it works, it's really easy to identify. You get pretty quick at seeing, oh, here's where this particular thing that I'm imparting intersects with me, and here's how it draws me into my own facing of whatever I need to face. And the thought that hit me right as I was kind of settling in to do this post today, I was thinking about there's a sense in which surrender and the notion of surrender in the kind of spiritual practice sense and the way we talk about it when we talk about inner work, it's such a profound thing to realize what surrender really is, because on one level surrender is like an availability to whatever lies beyond our fear, right? We in the world we have these barriers, or these perceived barriers. There's something where we see something or someone or some whatever as a barrier, and we're afraid to go beyond it. We're afraid of what lies beyond it. We're afraid of what happens if we don't make it beyond that barrier. However that barrier or obstacle or challenge presents itself. And surrender is simply surrendering, it's simply availing ourselves of whatever is beyond that without needing to destroy it or avoid it or sidestep it or escape it. There are all these things that we all these ways that we try to kind of duck and weave and dive and see if we can evade the inevitable. Of course, it very rarely works, and even when it does, we don't find that we've actually evaded the inevitable. We find that we've merely temporarily gained a little bit of relief, and then we find ourselves right back in the same predicament. So surrender is really stepping beyond that. It's really letting in the fact that whatever's beyond that is actually serving us. And so, and then there's another level of surrender, which I think is even maybe a deeper or a broader level, which is where we actually kind of own and fully embrace that everything is exactly as it needs to be. And this is something that's significant for me. I sort of, this becomes resonant for me when I think about how I view progress and how I view myself evolving as an artist, how I view myself evolving as a human being. And the kind of the goals that I have and the aspirations. What do I envision? How do I envision growing? And where I think this form or this particular definition of surrender becomes really key is in recognizing that all of that is absolutely fine. All of that is wonderful even. And that's a vision that ultimately it's less important that vision be true than it is that I experience and actually admit and surrender to the world as it is. And reconciling those two things is a kind of incredible thing, because it's one of them is sort of like the being side of the coin. The accepting everything as it is kind of I see that as the being side of the coin, in the sense that from the point of view of consciousness, literally nothing can be wrong. It's impossible for anything to ever be wrong. Death, not even a thing, not even an issue. There's no such, life, death, existence, non-existence. all the different dualities of the world are insignificant. They don't define consciousness. They are literally subsidiaries of consciousness. They have to be. That's what it means to be in duality. That's why duality is duality and unity is unity. So from that point of view, when we access that space of total unity, all duality becomes absolutely not a problem. World war, not even an issue. Now, from the point of view of becoming, the other side of the coin, the side of the coin of what are we manifesting? If we recognize that nothing is a problem, if we recognize that all polarity, all duality is ultimately an illusion, but even more importantly, everything is okay as it is, then what do we create from that space? What is it that pours forth? Why create at all? Why create? If everything is okay as it is, and all duality is an illusion, and nothing ultimately is ever wrong, then what are we doing? Why? And why have we not only created a reality and a duality in a place where things exist, but why have we created one where things feel so important and things feel so urgent and emotion is so heart-wrenching? Everything can be so beautiful, so horrifying. This is where again, this comes back to the kind of creative process, where if we recognize this space beyond duality, what is it that we usher into reality from that space? How do we express in reality? How do we express that realization in duality? And I think this is where, Chögyam Trungpa in his book, at the end of his book, my God, all I want to do is listen to that book over again. It's so just stunningly profound. And maybe I will on the drive to Houston. That'd be a perfect time to just crank through another 8 hours of that book. But he talks about he talks about the fact that ultimately there's nothing can be wrong. Nothing can be, we once we've solved that problem in ourselves, our contribution to the world can be a form of harmony. It can be a form of love. It can be a form of generosity. If before we've had that realization, the only thing we can contribute is further chaos. The only thing we can give to the world is more chaos. No matter what, we can do it in service of a humanitarian cause, in service of whatever we want to call it. Pick our favorite, most cherished, most significant cause in the world. All we will create through our energetic contribution to the world is further chaos if we haven't solved some of that stuff in ourselves, if we haven't solved within our own being the conflict with duality. That's the thing that I think is showing up. When we recognize that nothing in duality is a problem, we draw out of conflict with reality. We no longer think there's anything wrong. Even though clearly this is a world full of warring, fighting, deeply troublesome conundrums and factions of various persuasions that are out to destroy each other, that's also not a problem. None of that is a problem. When we get that, then we can contribute something that maybe alleviates that, maybe it doesn't, but it contributes an energy that's germinative and nurturing for the world, as opposed to adding increased chaos. And so as I was speaking to my friend this morning, my only thought was, wherever we are, if we can surrender to what is, that's like step one. Surrender to what is, and then see what wants to come out. See what wants to be born. See what is waking into consciousness today. What is pouring forth into the space of duality from the space of non-duality, So, what does progress look like? Well, first, let's get okay with the fact that progress itself is kind of an illusion. Let's get there and then see, right? It's a gentleness. It creates, ultimately, this is a deeply demanding practice, and it's very, I think, challenging. We will hit many, many barriers, and we will hit probably a fair amount of resistance as we lean into that perspective. But ultimately, it's a radical gentleness, a radical embrace of everything in the world, a radical love of everything beyond the divisions, beyond the duality, beyond the seeming conflict. And if we can get ourselves there, then what we create, then we don't have to worry so much about what we're creating. We create, almost by force, by it's de facto what will flow out of us is a kind of organizing, nurturing, loving gentleness. So, yeah, that's what came through today, people. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. My God, I never know what I'm going to say when I show up on these. Well, sometimes I do, but I didn't today. And it's your presence that's helping me find my way to what's really going on deep within me. So, thank you. Love you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.